What happens when a nation spends 40 years hiding its greatest weapons inside a solid mountain, only to watch the mountain itself become a deadly trap? Imagine building an impenetrable fortress out of millions of tons of solid rock, betting your entire national survival on the earth beneath your feet, and then waking up to realize the sky just figured out a way to chew right through it. Before we dive deep into the real story the mainstream news is missing, do me a quick favor and hit that like button right now. Subscribe to the channel and share this video with someone who still thinks modern warfare is just about dropping bigger bombs. Your support helps us uncover the hidden military strategies the world needs to see. For decades, military planners around the globe have understood a rule. They have understood a very simple, very brutal rule of modern combat. If your enemy can see your weapons, your enemy can destroy your weapons. This is not a new concept. Since the dawn of precision air power, the sky has been the ultimate high ground. When fighter jets and bombers became capable of dropping highly accurate munitions, standing armies realized that keeping their assets out in the open was an invitation. Keeping most valuable assets out in the open was basically an invitation for complete disaster. Iran watched this evolution of warfare very closely. They looked at global conflicts over the last half-century and took meticulous notes. They saw what happened to conventional armies that tried to stand toe-to-toe. They saw armies that tried to stand toe-to-toe with American air superiority. They witnessed entire armor divisions and massive storage depots turned to ash. They were turned to ash simply because they were sitting on the surface of the earth. So, Iranian military engineers made a highly calculated decision. They decided to dig. And they did not just dig shallow trenches or simple dirt bunkers. They embarked on one of the most ambitious engineering projects. They embarked on one of the most ambitious, expensive, and time-consuming military engineering projects in modern history. They began hollowing out entire mountain ranges. This was a strategy of immense patience and incredible discipline. Year after year, decade after decade, they poured endless resources into the dark. They carved out vast networks of subterranean tunnels. They built underground assembly lines for ballistic missiles. They constructed massive storage bays. They constructed storage bays complete with thick steel blast doors, independent ventilation systems, and dedicated access roads that simply vanished into rocky cliffs. These facilities, hidden deep beneath the jagged peaks of places like Isfahan, were designed to be completely immune to the chaos on the surface. The logic was rock solid. You cannot bomb what you cannot reach. For a very long time, ordinary bombs could not reach these depths. A standard high explosive weapon dropped from a fighter jet might leave a massive crater on the side of a hill, but nothing more. It might vaporize a building or tear apart an entire concrete runway. But against 80 or 100 feet of reinforced solid rock, it failed. It was basically just knocking on the front door. The weapons, sitting safely in the dark inside the mountain, would not even shake. This underground philosophy became the absolute cornerstone of Iran's national defense strategy. It was their ultimate insurance policy. They knew they could not match the raw air power of their adversaries, so they relied on the terrain itself to serve as armor. But warfare is a constant, brutal conversation between a shield and a sword. Every time someone builds a stronger shield, another designs a sharper sword. For a while, the United States military had a very specific, very heavy sword for this exact problem. It was known as the GBU-57. The GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrator was a true monster of a weapon. Weighing in at roughly 30,000 pounds, it was built for one thing. It was built to fall from the sky, smash through the earth, and obliterate the deepest bunkers on the planet. But there was a catch. There was a massive logistical catch to this weapon. Because it was so incredibly heavy and physically massive, only one aircraft could carry it. The B-2 Spirit stealth bomber was the only one. Using a B-2 bomber is not a simple task. You do not just turn the key. You do not just turn the key, start the engine, and fly a quick afternoon mission. These stealth bombers are incredibly rare and expensive. They are usually stationed halfway across the planet at bases in Missouri. Sending a B-2 to drop a bunker buster requires staggering planning. It involves coordinating mid-air refueling tankers, complex airspace deconfliction, and days of careful preparation. You cannot use it for rapid targets. You cannot use a 30,000-pound bomb carried by a strategic stealth bomber for everyday targets. It is a strategic asset reserved for high-value missions. This created a very clear tactical gap. On one hand, you had standard 2,000-pound bombs that could be carried by fighter jets. Those bombs could not penetrate deep mountain bases. On the other hand, you had the colossal GBU-57 that could definitely destroy the mountain. But it took too long to get there and was simply too expensive to use constantly. Iran knew this gap existed in the arsenal. They built their entire military strategy right in the middle of it. They banked heavily on the idea that they could roll out missiles. They believed they could roll a missile out, fire it, and hide the launcher back in the mountain before a bomber could cross the ocean. They weaponized time itself. But military engineers absolutely hate tactical gaps. The Pentagon quietly went to work on a solution for this. They needed a weapon that was heavy enough to crush a mountain, but light enough to be strapped to a fast, agile fighter jet. They needed a jet that was already stationed in the region. That solution finally arrived and completely rewrote the rules of this shadow war. Enter the GBU-72 Advanced 5,000-pound Penetrator. This weapon is a masterclass in modern destructive engineering. It is the perfect middle ground. It is heavy, but not too heavy. It is devastatingly powerful, but incredibly smart. It was designed to completely erase the advantage of time. It erased the advantage that Iran had relied on for 40 years. To understand why this bomb is so terrifying, you must understand the mechanics. A normal bomb explodes the moment it hits the ground. All of its kinetic energy and explosive force expands outward and upward. This looks very impressive on camera, but it does almost nothing to a hardened bunker 50 feet below. The GBU-72 is fundamentally different. It is encased in a specially engineered, ultra-hardened steel body. When it drops from the sky, it is moving with immense kinetic velocity. When it strikes the side of a mountain, it does not explode on contact. Instead, it uses that momentum and hardened steel shell. It uses that shell to punch straight into the solid rock. It physically tears through the earth, shattering concrete, dirt, and stone. But the real magic of this weapon is hidden inside the fuse. The bomb is equipped with a highly advanced delayed action smart fuse. As the bomb violently burrows deeper and deeper into the dark, the fuse is literally counting. It is calculating the layers of rock. It is calculating the exact layers of rock and void spaces it is passing through in real time. It is a thinking machine. If you love diving into the deep tactical details of global conflicts that the media ignores, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Hit the subscribe button right now, turn on your notifications, and drop a comment telling me what part of the world you're from. Engaging with this video is the best way to support independent military analysis. It waits patiently until it senses it has broken through. It waits until it has finally broken through the last layer of reinforced concrete and entered the open cavern where missiles are stored. Only then, deep inside the absolute heart of the enemy fortress, does it trigger the detonation. The result is absolutely catastrophic. Because the massive explosion happens in an enclosed underground space, the blast wave has nowhere to go. It reflects violently off the walls. It multiplies the atmospheric overpressure and completely vaporizes everything inside. It is not just blowing up the front doorway. It goes deeper. It is reaching into the deepest, safest part of the mountain and ripping it inside out. Let us talk about the aircraft involved. Let us talk about the aircraft that carries this weapon into battle, because the delivery system is just as important as the bomb. While the B-2 stealth bomber is a ghost in the night, the F-15E Strike Eagle is a heavy-hitting brawler of the skies. The Strike Eagle is a twin-engine, two-seat fighter jet specifically built for deep strike missions far behind enemy lines. It is built tough. It was designed with a very particular combat philosophy. It needs to be able to carry an absolutely massive payload of heavy munitions. It must fly through violent weather and total darkness, fight off enemy aircraft if it gets intercepted, and drop bombs with accuracy. It must fight its way back home. When the Air Force realized they could successfully mount this bunker buster underneath the wing, things changed. When they mounted it on an F-15E, the entire strategic calculus in the Middle East shifted instantly. Think about the response time difference. The United States always keeps squadrons of Strike Eagles forward deployed at various air bases scattered across the region. They're already there. They're already there, sitting on the tarmac, fully fueled and heavily armed. If an American spy satellite passes over the desert and detects movement, if it detects sudden movement outside a previously unknown mountain tunnel, the clock starts ticking immediately. This is the new reality. In the old days, commanders would have to watch that movement and request a strategic bomber from the continental United States. They would wait nearly a full day for it to arrive. By then, the Iranian missile launcher would be long gone, hidden again. Now, the response is almost instantaneous. Intelligence confirms the target. The GPS coordinates are beamed directly to a Strike Eagle sitting on a runway. The coordinates go to a jet just a few hundred miles away. The jet takes off, hits supersonic speeds, and is circling the target. It is circling high over the target within an hour. This completely collapses the window of safety that Iran once depended on. The Earth can no longer protect them, and distance can no longer buy them time. Now, let us look at the guidance. Let us look closely at how this weapon actually finds its target, because dropping 5,000 pounds of steel is not easy. It is not a simple game of gravity. You have to hit a very specific, very small point on the side of a mountain. If the bomb hits just a few feet to the left or right, it might bury itself into solid granite instead of a weak point. The GBU-72 handles this massive problem using a highly sophisticated dual-mode guidance system. It is a smart piece of hardware. Before the pilot even releases the weapon, exact GPS coordinates are programmed into the bomb's internal computer. It knows where to go. Once it falls away from the wing, a set of aerodynamic fins on the tail of the bomb spring into action. They steer. These fins constantly adjust the bomb's flight path as it falls through the atmosphere, steering it precisely toward those exact coordinates. But GPS is not always perfect. GPS signals can be jammed by enemy electronic warfare. The weather can be terrible as well. The target might be obscured by thick clouds or heavy smoke. That is exactly why the weapon also features a laser seeker. It has a highly sensitive laser guidance seeker on its nose. The weapon systems officer can point a focused laser beam at the door. They point it exactly at the doorway of the underground bunker. The bomb will see that laser reflection and ride the beam down. It rides the beam all the way down to the dirt. And here is the truly brilliant part of this engineering. It adapts. If the jet suddenly has to maneuver violently to dodge an incoming missile and the laser beam breaks contact, the bomb survives. The bomb does not just turn into a dumb piece of metal. It instantly recognizes the loss of the laser and switches back. It seamlessly falls back on its internal GPS and inertial navigation systems and continues flying itself directly to the last known coordinates. This intense level of redundancy is what makes the weapon so lethal. It was not built by scientists in a pristine laboratory. It was built by military engineers who understand that real combat is chaotic, messy, and totally unpredictable. They built for the friction. They built a weapon that fights through the friction of war. So, what exactly are these strike eagles dropping these weapons on? We need to look closely at the rugged, mountainous terrain near Isfahan. This area is not just a random plot of desert. It is the beating heart of Iran's ballistic missile infrastructure. For decades, intelligence agencies have watched as Iran poured concrete. They moved thousands of tons of earth in this specific region. Satellite imagery has captured a slow, methodical buildup over the years. You can see separate, heavily fortified storage bays. You can trace the path of reinforced access roads that disappear into the hills. These entrances are heavily camouflaged. From the ground, they are designed to look like completely ordinary rock formations. It is a trick. But the network underneath is staggering in its complexity. The core philosophy of this facility is decentralization. They spread things out. Iran did not just dig one giant hole and put all of their missiles inside. That would be a single point of failure. Instead, they built a sprawling, interconnected labyrinth. They created dozens of different access points to confuse the enemy. The idea was simple. Even if the Americans found one door and bombed it, the missiles could be wheeled through a corridor. They could be moved to a completely different exit on the other side of the mountain. They could still roll out and fire. They could still roll out, launch their payload, and vanish. This is why you have seen reports in the past of failure. You have seen reports where a bunker was bombed, but days later a missile was fired from the exact same mountain range. It was incredibly frustrating for military planners. Chipping away at the doors was not enough. They needed to collapse the hallways. They needed a weapon that could destroy the central storage bays and trap the weapons inside forever. That is the GBU-72. That is exactly why the GBU-72 is being used here so aggressively. It is systematically dismantling a project from a generation ago. To truly grasp the gravity of what is being lost, you have to understand the sheer scale of the Iranian arsenal. We are not talking about a few dozen rockets. Military analysts estimate a stockpile of 10,000 to 15,000 missiles. These weapons are spread out across multiple subterranean facilities, just like the ones near Isfahan. This arsenal is the foundation. This massive arsenal is not just a tool for combat, it is the absolute foundation of Iran's geopolitical leverage in the region. In the complex chess game of Middle Eastern politics, Iran's missile program serves as their ultimate deterrent. It keeps others away. They know they cannot win a traditional naval battle against a massive carrier strike group. They know their air force is outdated. But if you have 15,000 precision-guided missiles hidden underground, you have a very loud voice at the table. You have the ability to threaten regional bases, critical energy infrastructure, and vital shipping lanes. It is a powerful threat. This stockpile is an insurance policy that guarantees their survival and forces their adversaries to think twice before launching an invasion. If you are finding this breakdown valuable and it is helping you connect dots, take a moment to share this video. Share this video directly with your friends. Leave a massive thumbs up and hit subscribe. We rely on viewers like you. We rely on you to keep this channel growing and keep the real analysis flowing. When an F-15E drops a penetrator, when it vaporizes a storage bay full of these missiles, it is not just destroying metal. It is burning political leverage. Every single tunnel that collapses takes away a bargaining chip. But finding these tunnels has triggered a different kind of war. It is a quiet, invisible conflict fought completely in the shadows of space and cyberspace. This is the intelligence war. If you know your enemy is relying on multi-billion-dollar spy satellites to find doors, what do? You lie. You start lying to the satellites. Iran has heavily invested in the art of military deception to counter the eyes in space. They know when the satellites are passing overhead, they understand the orbital schedules perfectly, so they have begun constructing decoys. They will spend weeks moving heavy construction equipment around a random, empty hillside just to create a false impression. They will pour concrete, lay down fake blast doors, and even create artificial thermal signatures to make it look active. They want to make it look like a facility is active and generating heat. The goal is to trick the analysts. They want the analysts sitting in a dark room in Virginia to make a mistake. They want them to waste a bomb. They want the Americans to waste a highly expensive, deeply complex 5,000-pound weapon on an empty hole in the ground. This means the burden of proof for the targeting teams has never been higher. A bunker buster relies on humans. The weapon is incredible, but it is ultimately entirely reliant on the human beings who tell it where to fall. The analysts have to cross-reference optical satellite photos with synthetic aperture radar, infrared signatures, and human intelligence. It is complex. They have to ask themselves constant, grueling questions. Is that heat signature coming from a missile assembly line or a generator? Did they just bury a giant generator in the dirt to fool us? Is that dirt track actually used by heavy vehicles? Was it carved out specifically to waste our time? This cat and mouse game is relentless. The sky is watching. The sky is constantly watching, and the ground is constantly lying. Let us dive deeper into the economic shockwaves of this. What happens inside an Iranian mountain does not just stay in the Middle East. It sends violent ripples across the entire globe. The true pressure point of this entire conflict is not just Isfahan. It is a narrow stretch of blue water. It is the stretch known as the Strait of Hormuz. The Strait of Hormuz is arguably the most important choke point on Earth. On any given day, roughly 20% of the world's total oil supply floats through this extremely narrow corridor. It is vital. Massive supertankers, carrying hundreds of millions of dollars worth of crude oil, navigate these waters to connect energy producers. They connect the Middle East with the massive, hungry economies of Asia, Europe, and the Americas. Iran's geography is key here. Their entire southern coastline completely dominates the northern edge of the strait. For decades, they have looked at this as a card. They have looked at this waterway as their ultimate trump card. They have continually threatened that, if pushed, they will shut it. They threaten that if their economy is squeezed, they will simply shut the strait down. They have a specialized force for this. They do not rely on massive destroyers or aircraft carriers. Instead, they have stockpiled thousands of armed fast attack speedboats. They have sea mines and coastal defense cruise missiles. These weapons are often hidden inside the very same underground bunkers. They are built into the coastal cliffs instead of the inland deserts. The threat is incredibly potent and real. You do not even have to actually sink a massive oil tanker to cause global panic. The announcement alone is enough. The moment Iran simply announces that the strait is closed, the global markets react violently. Prices jump immediately. Insurance companies in London immediately skyrocket the premiums for any vessel trying to enter the Persian Gulf. Costs go up. Underwriters refuse to cover the cargo. Shipping conglomerates, terrified of losing a ship and crew, order their captains to wait. The supply chain freezes. Oil prices shoot up. Gas prices at the local pump thousands of miles away spike overnight. This is the power of a blockade. It is a weapon of pure economic terror. But recently, dynamics have turned. Recently, the dynamics of this waterway have taken a wildly unexpected turn. The United States has always maintained a heavy presence. They maintain a presence to keep shipping lanes open. They escort tankers and use advanced radar to track incoming drones. They deploy helicopters to deter the swarms of fast attack boats. However, the strategy has escalated from simple protection. It has moved to aggressive economic countermaneuvers. Washington has introduced a radically different approach to maritime security. They have effectively established their own counter-blockade, but with a highly controversial twist that has surprised many. Reports suggest that the United States is pushing to essentially act as a toll collector for safety in the region. The logic is that the American military has spent 50 years as the free bodyguard for global shipping. Now they want fees. They are signaling a demand for a percentage fee on cargo passing through protected corridors. It is a major policy shift. Whether you view this as brilliant hardball or a dangerous escalation, the message to Tehran is incredibly clear and firm. The leverage Iran thought they held over the waterway is being forcefully stripped away. They are watching it be neutralized. They are watching it be monetized by their greatest adversary. This creates an intense, burning resentment within the military leadership. They are seeing foreign warships dictate the economic rules just miles from their own sovereign beaches. It is a loss of control. And this brings us right back to the GBU-72 and the F-15E Strike Eagles. This is where they meet. When Iran feels backed into a corner in the Strait of Hormuz, their immediate instinct is to move their missiles out. They prepare to fire. And the moment those tunnel doors open, the American intelligence network spots them quickly. The bunker busters fall from the sky. It is a brutally efficient cycle of action and reaction. No one can hide. Every time Iran reaches for its maritime weapon, the United States destroys the holster. The physical destruction is creating cracks. This relentless destruction is creating massive, visible cracks in the diplomatic arena. War is never just about dropping bombs. It is about forcing your opponent to sign a piece of paper that gives you what you want. Recently, there was hope. Recently, the world thought we were finally seeing that piece of paper. Diplomats gathered with a great ceremony at the Palace of Versailles. The setting was symbolic, intended to project the gravity of a lasting peace. They signed a memorandum of understanding. It was supposed to completely halt the airstrikes, ease the blockades, and bring the region back from the brink of war. The international community breathed a massive sigh of relief. But pieces of paper only work if the guns respect them. The Versailles Agreement did not even survive a single month. Almost immediately, Iranian forces began harassing commercial shipping traffic again. Drones were launched. Tankers were approached by armed speedboats. Iran was attempting to assert its own regulatory control once more. They demanded that vessels follow their specific routes and pay their fees, ignoring the spirit of the newly signed truce. The reaction from Washington was swift and absolute. The truce was publicly declared dead. The diplomatic channels were slammed shut. The roar of fighter jet engines echoed across the desert once again. Within days, the sky was filled with aircraft. The bombing campaign resumed with a terrifying intensity, focusing heavier than ever on erasing the deep underground missile complexes. This rapid collapse of diplomacy reveals something profoundly important about what is happening inside the halls of power in Tehran. When a government signs an agreement one week and breaks it the next, it tells you they are not one mind. We are witnessing a deep, volatile fracture within the Iranian leadership. On one side, you have the pragmatic political factions. These individuals are looking at the terrifying reality of their situation. They see their currency struggling and infrastructure falling. They see their projects being systematically dismantled by weapons like the GBU-72, which they have no defense against. They understand that their 40-year investment in underground fortresses is rapidly turning into a series of expensive tombs. This faction desperately wants an off-ramp. They want a deal that stops the bleeding and allows the country to rebuild. On the exact opposite side, you have the hardline military commanders and ideological purists. They refuse to bend. This faction views any form of compromise as absolute surrender. They have spent their entire careers building the missile program. To them, giving up their ballistic missiles or relinquishing control of the Strait of Hormuz is completely unacceptable. They will fight. They believe that if they absorb enough punishment and keep fighting, the West will eventually lose the political will. They think the West will stop the expensive bombing campaign. These two factions are locked in a bitter civil war. They are fighting for the future of the country. When the pragmatists gain the upper hand, you see quiet negotiations. When the hardliners seize control of the situation, you see commercial ships suddenly getting attacked in the dead of night. This internal chaos makes the country wildly unpredictable. It is the reason why this conflict keeps moving in circles. A strike happens. Pressure forces them to the table. A deal is reached, and then the hardliners sabotage it. The deal collapses, and the bombs start falling all over again. As this cycle spins, it changes the world. It is fundamentally changing the way the entire world looks at modern combat. The era of industrial warfare is over. We have entered the era of the hyper-precise, hyper-visible battlefield. Look at the elements defining this specific campaign. We are talking about precision penetrators that can count layers of rock. We are talking about satellites detecting dirt changes. We are talking about unmanned drones, hunting tankers, and laser-guided munitions falling from jets in the dead of night. In this new paradigm of war, brute force is no longer enough. The victor is not the side with most soldiers. The victor is the side with the fastest processing power, clearest satellite imagery, and most reliable data flow. Iran's survival strategy was built for a world that simply does not exist anymore. They built fortresses for shadows. They built them during a time when hiding in the shadows was a viable military tactic. But today, shadows are illuminated. When a military loses its ability to hide, it loses its ability to survive a prolonged engagement. It is a realization. This is a terrifying realization for any nation that relies on secrecy to protect its assets. The safe havens are gone. The GBU-72 is not just destroying tunnels. It is destroying the very concept of a safe haven. It finds everything. But amidst all this talk of steel and strategy, we cannot forget the intensely human element of this crisis. These massive decisions are not being made by computers. They are being made by stressed, exhausted human beings under pressure. In Washington, commanders are constantly weighing the risk of pushing too far and accidentally sparking a massive regional war. In Tehran, leaders are watching their life's work turn to dust, struggling to find a way to save face. They are struggling to not lose their grip on power. And caught in the middle are millions of ordinary people. The sailors navigating oil tankers through hostile waters, constantly scanning the horizon for incoming drones. They are the ones at risk. The citizens watching their local economies buckle under the weight of fluctuating energy prices. They feel the impact daily, the people living in the shadow of these mountains, feeling the earth shake violently as another 5,000-pound weapon hits. This war is a masterclass in the brutal reality of strategic leverage. It is a methodical stripping away of all options. The United States is not trying to occupy the country. They are executing a highly calculated campaign of disarmament. They are going mountain by mountain, tunnel by tunnel, and weapon by weapon. They are forcing Iran into a tight corner. They only have two choices left. They can either sit at the table and negotiate away their arsenal peacefully, or they can watch the rest of it get vaporized by fighter jets they cannot even see. There is no middle. The GBU-72 was not the weapon that started this conflict. The roots go back decades in religious ideology and sanctions. But this specific bomb, and the engineering behind it, might just be the tool that finally ends it. It is effective. It has proven that no matter how deep you dig, or how much concrete you pour, you cannot outrun the sky. The earth is no longer a shield. It is just another layer of the target. 40 years of labor is obsolete. 40 years of patient, careful, backbreaking labor to build a subterranean fortress has been rendered completely obsolete by falling steel. It is steel that knows exactly when to explode. The mountains around Isfahan used to represent the ultimate symbol of defiance. They were monuments to a nation's absolute refusal to be dictated to by foreign air power. Now they are craters. Today, they are quiet, smoking craters that represent the harsh, unforgiving reality of technological inferiority. The message is clear. Every tunnel that collapses is a powerful message. The message is that the old ways of fighting are officially dead. The insurance policies have expired. The leverage is gone. We are watching the systematic dismantling of a defense strategy. It is broadcast in high definition for the entire world to see. Where this conflict goes next depends on the leaders. It depends on whether the leaders sitting in Tehran can accept that the rules of the game have permanently changed forever, or if they will continue to sacrifice their mountains until there is absolutely nothing left to hide. The sky conquered. The sky has finally conquered the earth, and the world of modern warfare will never be the same again.